All right, I see the clock counting down, so I guess we should get started. First of all, thank you for coming on this late on a Friday. I'm quite impressed with the turnout. I can't believe this many people had nothing better to do. Anyway, thank you for coming. I hope everyone has had a good I/O. This is the Fireside chat for Chrome. So this is your opportunity to have one last shot to ask us questions before we all turn into pumpkins. Things that have come up over through I/O or things that are on the top of your mind. We'll quickly run through just who we are, and it's sort of something of a tradition for Fireside chats is we usually begin with what each of us is most interested in terms of an upcoming feature or what's on the top of our mind. So we'll do that, and hopefully that will inspire some of you to hit the mics and ask us questions. Otherwise, it's just going to be us talking for about 40 minutes, which probably isn't going to be that interesting. So definitely get your questions ready. I'm Ellison-Taylor. I'm the Director of Product Management for the web platform part of Chrome. I think we've already, trying to think of the top features as I look down the line, I think we've already hit probably my favorite in the keynote, which is web components and the toolkit, just simply for what I think it will allow folks like you to be able to do over the next year much more easily than you've been able to do. So I think that's going to be my top feature. So I will pass the mic.
I'm Lars. I'm a software engineer at Google, and my favorite feature I look forward to is speed, and that'll come to you in form of Dart.
Hi, I'm Greg Simon. I'm Managing Director for Blink, and my most anticipated feature that I can't wait to see is the lazy block layout.
Hi, I'm Erik. I'm the instructor for apps, extensions, native client, and I too am really excited about web components. I think it's been this huge gap in the web platform that we're finally going to fill in and really make the web an equal to other toolkits out there.
Hi, my name is Darin Fisher. I'm an eng lead on Chrome. And by far the thing that I'm most excited about is performance, and I'm really excited about what we're doing to give you all back the main thread and dejank the browser and make the rendering engine much, much, much faster and more responsive.
Hi, I'm Matt McNulty. I lead the Polymer team, and I'm most excited about web components as well, because without them, we're dead.
Hello. My name is Jeff Chang, and I'm a product manager on Chrome's UI features and releases. And one of the things that I'm most excited about personally is WebRTC, particularly on mobile. I think the notion that you can use your phone and fire up a browser and just go to a website and immediately be able to video chat with someone else without installing any plugins or whatnot, I think that's amazing.
And I'm Vangelis Kokkevis. I'm the engineering lead for the Chrome GPU team. We're the folks who take care of the rendering performance in Chrome, including GPU accelerating, rendering, and some of the 3D APIs that we currently have in Chrome. And I'll echo what most people said here. Performance is really what we're after here.
We've also got other members of the Chrome team and other parts of Google sitting in the audience as well. So hopefully we can answer questions in any sort of area that might be on your mind. We have a couple of folks I see from Adobe and Bruce as well from Opera, who's on hand to answer maybe if there are general questions about web standards, and maybe get an outside perspective. I'm more than happy to hand over the mic to Bruce and others if people have questions. So with that, let's get started. First question. Who wants to go first?
Hi guys. I was wondering why Chrome was not the default browser and Webview in Android, and if there's any light at the end of the tunnel with that.
I don't know, who's most qualified to answer that, Darin?
Well, I can just say that that's something that's being worked on. You can see, if you go to chromium.org, that there is an Android Webview project being built that can be built from the Chromium sources. It's a project that we're of course fairly interested in. I think Chrome is, our team is all about making the web platform better, and we want to make sure that that extends to the Webview that's available on Android.
Yeah, and I think just as time goes on, the plan that we hope is that you'll see the Webview and Chrome increasingly become the default on newer devices. There's work to be done, I think.
Since there are many people standing, I thought maybe I'd ask one more question.
All right, sure. Yeah.
I kind of see the future of Web IDs as being in the user agents themselves, and I think the Chrome Dev Tools kind of realize this vision the most out of any sort of developer suite, but it's not really quite there yet when you compare it to things like Coda and Sublime Text, and but it seems to be pushing further and further in that direction every year, and I was wondering what the team's philosophy or intent was in this area.
Lars, are you closest to DevTools or?
I'll take a swing. So unfortunately, Pavel's not here. But I mean, if anybody's been following the progress of Chrome DevTools over the last couple of years, I think the changes they've made, the rate of change is just amazing. You know, you check back every few months, and it's like, you know, some huge, awesome new features landed. And so this time around, yeah, they did land code editing, local code editing. So that's a new feature. And since it's just added and just showing up, I think it's early days. And so, yes, they definitely want to make it possible for people to do end-to-end development and to take care of all the debugging needs, from memory profiling to, you know, sort of timeline rendering performance to, you know, I think end-to-end, they want to do the whole thing. And the other bit of philosophy, by the way, just from the team's perspective, is they don't, even though they want to build it into the browser so it's there by default, they want to make it possible for other tools to integrate as well. So everything that's done in Chrome DevTools is done via an open protocol, a network protocol that anyone can plug into. And as you see that a number of IDEs are doing this, from, you know, the JetBrains guys to Eclipse to whatever, they all now talk to the Chrome debugging tools, and basically they can use all the same features that we add.
Certainly, in the short term, you're going to see the team focus more on tools to help you find and fix jank and deal with memory.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for making web faster with Chrome. And my question is back to Webview in Android. Like, once you make Chrome default one, how are you going to release it? I mean, have a rapid release cycle for that?
Well, I will just say that I think we are all very interested in getting to a point where the Webview is something that could be auto-updated. It's the kind of thing that people dream, definitely that we dream about and imagine. Wouldn't that be nice? So it's definitely the kind of thing, you know, coming from the Chrome team, this is something that's this is how we look at software. I mean, Chrome has this kind of auto-update cycle. It would make sense for the Webview to have that as well.
Hey there, I'm a release manager for Firefox, so just full transparency. I'm really curious to know about your releases, your stability, and if there's anything you're planning to do to open up crash data for public viewing, and as a way that we could maybe even know if there's common crashes we're experiencing on the web in general. Anything, it looks like you already anonymized the data, so is that something that you might open up at some point? And actually, a follow-up to that is, I'm just curious if the recent dip in Chrome adoption is at all related to stability. Are there any opinions on that?
Hi. So first of all, thank you to Firefox for, you know, I think the fact that you guys moved to a faster release cycle is great for the web and it's great for users in general. On the crash data thing, I'll definitely look into that. I'll talk with our release managers about that. Actually, had Adobe asking us a similar question recently, and so. We'll see what we can do. And the last point, we actually haven't seen any dip in user adoption, so yeah.
So one other thing about that, it turns out the crash data, that even if you anonymize it, it has personal identifiable information in it. It'll be a URL, it'll be maybe form contents of the page, it'll be that sort of thing. So it's actually, it turns out that crash data is very sensitive. It's not the sort of thing that we can sort of easily give out on that front. The other big problem with crash data is that crashes are almost, well, a large percentage of crashes are a pointer to potential security problems. If there's a crash, that probably means that there's some exploit behind it, quite often I should say. And that's another reason why, until we've tracked down the source of that crash, we probably can't make it public. Now, it's possible that things like crash rates and stability and changes on that front are something that we could do, or maybe even like pointing at modules or individual areas of the product. But in terms of actually getting the crash data out there and making it available, I don't think that's something we'll be able to do.
Right, but like pointing at SVG wouldn't actually tell you anything useful, right?
I have a question about Netflix. On the Chromebook Pixel, which I've been using for a while, the LTE version, in the stable channel, everything works great. There are times I've noticed that whenever the Pixel gets hot, it'll downgrade the CPU and the video quality will go down. But what I don't understand is in the developer and beta version, the video quality is really poor, regardless of the bandwidth connection and regardless of my settings on Netflix. I've asked around while I've been here, and I haven't been able to find a clear-cut answer of why. I know whenever I'm using Chrome on my Windows computer and I hit Shift-Control-Alt-S, I have the ability to manually select the speed at which it's playing the video. But I don't know a combination on Chrome or for Chrome OS. But my goal and my question is, how do I get my video quality back up to HD?
Well, I mean, I don't know that we necessarily have experts here who know exactly all the details there, but it's possible you're just seeing a bug in the beta channel. It's also possible that you're seeing the effects of a different of the changes to the player. I'm not really sure. I think we'd have to look into it.
Yeah, the other thing is, we have these channels for a reason. I mean, when I first got my first Chromebook, I was living on Dev channel, and there were some days where it just didn't quite work at all. So, now I live on beta. We do use these channels, to like test, to do experiments, well, at least the like Canary and Dev.
I would really encourage you to file a bug. Actually, don't assume that just because you're seeing something that seems wrong in beta channel don't assume that everybody else is seeing it too. So we really appreciate bug reports.
Yes, I had one. One was filed for me earlier today.
Excellent.
While I was asking the question.
Great.
Thank you.
Quick question about Bluetooth. It's cool to see Chrome getting Bluetooth support. Is it also going to get Bluetooth LE support?
I don't know if anybody here is, we don't have any Chrome OS hardware guys here, but I believe so. I mean, I think that that's a fairly new emerging standard, and I know people who are playing with it. I just don't know what any kind of timeline or any products in particular. The reason Darin handed the mic to me is that we do have APIs that we are part of Chrome packaged apps that allow you to write apps that talk to Bluetooth devices. No LE support in there either, but definitely you can integrate with hardware from your apps.
Right, and those APIs are actually pretty good. So thanks.
Thanks.
Hi there, I had a question about release cycles, and I think that the rapid release cycle that's been adopted initially by Chrome and kind of carried on to some other browsers as well has really accelerated the rate at which we're seeing some great new features show up. The way we end up kind of deciding what we feel safe targeting now, because there is still somewhat of a tail of people, how long it is varies, who are on older versions of assorted browsers. We kind of pick features that we feel are in the majority of browsers, and then we look and see, okay, how much can we fill in using JavaScript, and if we have to support something really far back, how much can we fill in by drinking ourselves into a stupor and pretending that feature doesn't exist? Do you think that going forward, we're still going to see the main way in which we get new features for people on older browsers is through JavaScript fill-in, or do you think that there might be some way we could find a way to approximate features outside of JavaScript and maybe something natively supported in the browser?
I mean, there are some things that just can't be polyfilled, right? I mean, like we're doing a project right now called Navigation Controller, which involves a script running when a URL request is made in the browser. I'm not sure exactly how to polyfill that, so for that we're just going to actually implement it, bind a flag. But yeah.
I think if you took a look at the work that the Polymer team has done, I used to be pretty skeptical about polyfills. I told them they're crazy to try to polyfill Shadow DOM, for example, and I think they even agreed with me when they were trying to do it. But yet somehow they actually managed to do it and to get pretty darn close. And so I think JavaScript polyfills are actually an important way forward. I'll toss out a plug for another polyfill approach, which can work with other types of features, which is, at least within Chrome, we can experiment and prototype new features with native client. So, for example, one of the things that Darin has pointed out repeatedly is, if in the past we had native client, we might have been able to say prototype, Web SQL. Without having to add it to the browser. And we would have learned quite a bit about what people thought about it and probably wouldn't have needed to have implemented it to begin with at that point. So I think that when you have a big pile of native code and you want to use that as a way to add features, we don't have to worry about rewriting it from scratch in JavaScript. We can still do polyfills that way as well.
Yeah, I would just say that general issue definitely encourages us to focus on identifying the best primitives, the simplest primitives that we can add to the platform that give us the most value add that allows us to make the polyfills work well. For example, there's a lot of discussion about pointer events, and we have a polyfill for pointer events, but it's missing one little piece, which is the touch action CSS property. So instead of biting off the whole pointer events spec up front, we're focusing just down on the touch action CSS property, because that's the thing that we actually have to put in the engine in order to make the polyfill actually be full fidelity. And once we do that, it turns out separating that touch action CSS property is actually generally useful. It's useful outside of the context of pointer events. It's useful as a way to, well, by the way, if you add a touch event handler to your page, you generally put the browser in a slow path. But the touch action CSS property lets you give the browser a little more information about this. And so it's a useful property all by itself. And so that whole idea of like focusing on primitives really works out nicely. I think it's worked out for things like MDV, where we decided to do mutation observers instead of the full thing up front. We added object.observe in a similar fashion to help make MDV work better, the model-driven views, which is leveraged by Polymer quite extensively. I don't know if you have anything to add, Matt.
I was going to bring up the object observer.
Oh, I stole your thunder.
Great, thank you very much.
Hi, my question is about scrolling and using Chrome on different platforms like Mac, Linux, Windows, and Android. I've noticed there's kind of a big gap in scrolling performance. It's not always consistent. It's not always as smooth as it could be, or perhaps as other browsers are. So I was curious, like, how much of that is under control by the Chrome browser, and how much is kind of determined by the platform, and maybe what areas are being looked at in terms of scrolling performance?
So a lot of it is indeed us. We are in this strange state where we have a number of architectures that are evolving over time, but they haven't been fully pushed out in all the platforms we have. So for example, on Android, we're sort of in the cutting edge scrolling architecture where we want to be, which is heavily multi-threaded, and we can do a lot of work outside the main thread. And then if you go backwards, Chrome OS is in sort of the next step, and then Windows. So we have threaded scrolling on Windows, Chrome OS, and Android with a slightly different version, and Mac is in a slightly older model. So our goal throughout the rest of this year is really to bring all the platforms at the same point and address scrolling performance problems once and for all.
If you have questions about scrolling from your own code, I strongly encourage you to go see Nat Duca and Tom Wiltz's talk from yesterday called Jank. What's it called? Jank. It's got Jank in the title.
Go to jankfree.org.
Yeah, it's really, really good. It'll explain exactly how people fall into these pitfalls.
My question is about extensions and their save data. Just with at the keynote we heard about the possibility of Android being able to save the data from device to device, but with Chrome, whenever I sign into a new machine, it downloads all my extensions, which is great, but all my preferences don't come over. Is there something that would allow kind of the same way that Android does that, so that those preferences would go into Chrome and then travel with me, or is that sort of on the extension developer's end?
So we were there first. Seriously, a year ago, we added an API to extensions called Chrome Storage Sync. And it's really simple. It's key value, very similar to local storage, but async. And it uses the Chrome Sync engine. So it's a great way to store settings and preferences, and we encourage all extensions and apps to use it. Within packaged apps, we also have another sync mechanism called Sync File System. Sync File System allows you to use things like documents and media files and that sort of thing, and to easily do file-based synchronization across machines, and it uses your Drive account to do that. And so with apps, not only do you bring your settings and your state with you, but you can also bring your documents with you wherever you go, so that those will be synced offline automatically without you as the app developer having to build any server infrastructure at all. So the tools are all there, but because they weren't there from day one, what you'll find is that there's some older extensions, or perhaps extension authors who just aren't aware of the feature, who haven't done it. And so definitely just bug your favorite extension author to add the feature. It's really easy.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. I'd like to know if you have any plans on releasing a 64-bit version for Mac, just because of Java and, you know.
Yep, we're working on it.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, to get all the things right, particularly with plugins. I mean, I think on Mac it's more straightforward than others, but on Windows, it's for those of you who would ask the obvious follow-on question. It turns out it's a much harder problem because most plugins are 32-bit, and so you have to do this 32 to 64-bit bridge. And anyway, there's a lot of other fun, interesting
I'm not just giving lip service. We are actually working on Exchange and email with Adobe in like the last week. We're working on it for Flash as well, and so it's definitely actively being worked on by engineers on our team.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, there's a lot of excitement on the Chrome team for 64-bit. Just it allows us to improve security and allows us to improve performance in some respects, for sure. Also, though, there's the risk of hurting performance because we end up using more memory. Things are just, you know, they end up taking up more space because they're 64-bit, you know, pointers and so on.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I used to use Netscape. Anybody remember that? And it became kind of slow and bloated over time, and I switched to Phoenix, which became Firebird, which became Firefox. And that became kind of overly large and bloated over time, and so I switched to Chrome. And over the past few months, I've noticed, especially with lots of tabs, I keep dozens of them open, it's been getting slower and slower. And I'm wondering what steps that you'll take in general to, as computers become faster, there's a tendency to optimize for the current, whatever the newest one is. And what steps do you take to make sure it doesn't become slower and slower and more bloated on existing computers?
I'll go first. I used to work on the V8 team, and I think we did a good job in making performance better, and that translates to old machine too. If you had an old machine, it would run faster with a better JavaScript engine. But at the same time, we spent a lot of time profiling applications and reducing memory footprint by tuning the garbage collector, so the total footprint for the app would stay minimal. Again, we are not the only ones that fault here, right? Because the application developers, they also put in code in the browser that allocates objects. And of course, when they get more modern machines, they write more code, and it penalizes the people using the browser. So certainly, we are trying all the time to minimize the amount of memory used by a tab, But in some cases it's very hard because when you have extra use, it's used by the application as well.
Yeah, I mean, there is more than one contributing factor to this, right? I mean, there is content you load that just runs in the background and you don't know it's running, or et cetera, and we aren't prioritizing the processes, et cetera. There are many micro benchmarks that we monitor with every build of Chrome, et cetera. But sometimes some piece of content comes down that tickles it in a certain way that we weren't actually measuring, and so there are certainly areas that we can improve, and that we are working on improving right now in the area of like shared workers and threads and things like that.
So the old story we say, and some of you may have heard us tell this story before, but I thought Darin was going to go with this, so I'll step on that one for him. Is when we started Chrome, when Darin and Ben first got the first version of Chrome up and running, and when I say first version of Chrome, I mean like no UI, just rendering a web page, really, literally.
Gray squares for tabs.
Okay, gray squares for tabs. Basically people said, well, you know what, from today on, this won't get any faster, because from now on, we're going to be adding features. And as you say, features, it's bloat, right? It can't help but slow things down. And so how do we prevent that? How do we keep it as fast as it feels right now? And the idea was that, well, let's create a performance benchmark now, before we add any features. And let's not regress that. Let's promise ourselves that we will not regress those benchmarks. And so startup performance was a big one. We wanted that to be, instantaneous. We have a page cycler benchmark from the early days that also we were very religious about. And so when every check-in, we run those, effectively every check-in, we run those tests. And when there's a very small regression, we revert that change. So, even something as small as, 10 milliseconds, 20 milliseconds, that's grounds for getting reverted, because those small regressions add up over time. Now, every now and again, you would look at something and a feature landed and it caused a regression, and you could totally understand why it caused a regression, but it was for a really good reason. And so the good news is that by measuring it so consistently, you could make informed trade-offs. There are times where you're willing to take a small performance hit to land a particular feature. But because we're religious about measuring it all along the way, we could make those as informed decisions. I think the last bit that I just want to reinforce from what these guys are saying is that in some ways we're a victim of all the cool performance and features we've been adding. That by making JavaScript amazingly faster, and by adding WebGL and whatever, that people are now writing more complex web pages. That even the most basic things that you were doing before, people are doing cooler stuff with it. And so those 20 tabs that you have open today are actually doing a lot more than they were just a few years ago. And so that's part of it. But I want to be clear, though, that we're not perfect. We do have regressions. We do have things that happen. And one of the things that we're concerned about over time is that there are things that just happen because people's profiles get big, because their history ages, because they install more stuff. And those are things that are hard to test up front. They're hard to test in the lab and hard to reproduce. And so to catch those, we tried to do field measurements, and get aggregate statistics and look for regressions in the field on that front. But some of these things even still are hard to track down. And so if you've got specific things or specific pages or whatever that you think are, just noticeably worse, or scenarios that are noticeably worse, please file a bug. We take performance very seriously. It's really our number one concern.
Yeah, I just add, just briefly on top of that, there's definitely those two halves to the equation. There's the sites that we're loading that have changed over time and gotten bigger, and so that's where things like Speedy, WebP, and other things that I hope will speed things up a little bit and get some of that performance back. And also that those usage cases have changed over time. And so we've been recently looking at sort of rebalancing some of the code that sort of better reflects more typical use cases. And I think page load time got about, 5%, something around 5% faster just recently, because we went and re-architected a few things to recognize these scenarios. So there's still a lot more that we can do. those sort of heuristics, and also trying to get more code out of the way at startup and get rid of some of that bloat that's crept in. But there is also that, using WebP and other similar techniques to reduce the loads, you can have more tabs open. So hopefully we'll continue to see improvements over the months to come.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many performance metrics that we measure now that it became too much for like a human to actually read. So earlier in the year, we borrowed some signal processing code from Google search, I guess. Sure. To actually go through and watch it all, and then to send us alerts when it happens, because it just became too much. I mean, we really care about it a lot.
We very nearly had a screenshot for the keynote. We got cut at the last minute that showed one of the performance dashboards that was 100 different charts that monitored all these different things and some of the alerts that went on. It's very, very complicated to look at these performance scenarios, but we'll keep working on it.
And I also think it's worth mentioning that the way that technology is moving in general, it forces us to go and rethink some of the sort of the core architecture principles that we've had, because now instead of having the 8, 12, 30 core machines, we're dealing with mobile devices with a lot more constraints. So a lot of the architecture decisions we're making are to address lower power devices, and sort of as a side effect of that, we're going to get older PCs to become faster as well.
By the way, in case it isn't obvious from the number of people who wanted to chime in on this one, we care a lot about performance.
Performance and security. But we should probably, I'm sorry.
I was going to pile on with what Erik just said. So.
Okay. Okay, I was going to try and move us on. I'm watching that clock count down. Okay, let's go to the next one. Thanks.
Hopefully this is a quick one. My question's about Flash. Chrome is kind of unique in that Flash is bundled and updated through the browser. I was curious how that partnership with Adobe works, and also if you see that as continuing long term, or if Flash might be phased out in the future.
So, I can't comment on like the business partnership, but we've definitely enjoyed working with Adobe to, one, as you say, build in Flash into Chrome so that you get it right off the bat. You never have to worry about installing it. And two, the kind of bigger reason we did that was so we could work directly with them to get Flash inside of Chrome's sandbox. And so we're very happy that on Windows and Mac and Chrome OS, Flash is actually running inside of Chrome's sandbox. And so when you see news about all these exploits and people getting pwned through Flash, we've been happy that Chrome users are protected even more through that sandbox. And so because we take security so seriously, yes, we will definitely keep doing that.
Yeah, and just to put that into perspective, I mean, the amount of security bugs that we encounter in Blink, it's ongoing. The sandbox is really the best mitigation we have, as well as our rapid auto update to keep users safe. Code is complicated. It's easy to write bugs that can be exploited. And so we need belts and suspenders. We need ways to protect users. And so getting Flash, not just in the sandbox, but on our auto update train means that we can help provide users with the best experience and a very secure experience.
Yeah, I forgot to mention auto update part. So every time a new Flash version comes out, you get it in Chrome automatically. You don't have to worry about it.
Go to this side.
Hey everybody. One of the problems I have is when I have a lot of tabs open, the individual tab items themselves gets very, very small and kind of hard to work with. It used to be possible to have vertical tabs in Chrome, and I was wondering, what are your thoughts on vertical tabs, and will we ever see them again?
Jeff.
We can all look at Jeff.
Yeah, come on, Jeff.
PM for Chrome front end.
He's backing away from the stage.
Yeah, okay. I now have another data point, another request, so I'll keep it in mind.
It's been one of these long things we've always talked about, how to manage more tabs better. It's a very challenging topic.
We do have a wacky idea if you're interested in hearing that. A wacky idea is to provide an extension API to just hide tabs, to make them so they're not even visible, and then to give extension authors the ability to create their own UI surface for them. I don't know if we'll actually get around to doing something like that, but it was one wacky idea.
Thanks.
My question is regarding extensions for Chrome, and is there any plan to bring that to Chrome for Android?
It's something we've explored. It's hard on a lot of fronts. First off, as Vangelis pointed out earlier, it's Android, phones in particular, I should say, are very constrained devices, right? And so right now we're trying to make Chrome as small as we can, and so we're stripping as much out as we can, and still keeping it functional. And so we're not quite ready to say that it's time to add more features back in quite yet. But we're experimenting with it internally. And I think the other big concern to think about with extensions on mobile is, mobile is very different on a few fronts that don't really work all that well with the model we've got. So first off, there's different UI surfaces. There's different, like a much smaller amount of screen real estate. Secondly, in these mobile environments, things are killed off all the time. The browser doesn't keep running. When you switch to another app, it's gone. And one of the nice things about extensions were the things they keep running and they keep doing their thing. So I think that there are some challenges that even when we want to do it, the experiments we've done are just trying to figure out how to make it even make sense. So even if we do it, it's likely to be something that's not 100% compatible with what we're doing on the desktop. That would be a different beast altogether.
Hello. I was curious about how you've been using all the anonymous user usage data you've been getting from us. How to make the product better in the Chrome browser?
Yeah, so you're talking about when you install Chrome, there's an option to opt in to anonymous usage statistics, and that's like button clicks and things and crash reports and stuff like that when you're using features. And yeah, we look at that stuff all the time. And recently, we've actually improved upon that system. I think we blogged about it, but we have basically an experimental system by which we can push out different versions of features to different buckets of users. So we do live A/B experiments through our auto update system, and then we can see, oh, well, a trivial example, this many people clicked on version A of the button versus version B of the button versus version C of the button or whatever, and we can compare metrics like stability and feature usage and retention of Chrome users and stuff like that. And then we can decide, which one we want to go with. Of course, it doesn't make all of our decisions for us. We take a combination of the data and our intuition and stuff like that to decide what to do. But yeah, we definitely look at that. The other thing I should mention is we only put in stats for things. We have to decide what to measure and then put in the stats for it and then decide what to do. So it's not like we're just collecting random stats everywhere.
We could also use it to, we could also use it to do really short experiments. One of my favorite examples of this was one of the folks in the team couldn't figure out by reading MSDN what the max file path length was. He got at least 2, maybe 3 different answers. But this is something that you actually want to get right because it can lead to strings that are out of bounds, et cetera. So he checked in an experiment for like 24 hours. And got the decisive answer for it, and then took the actual code out, all done in the open.
I mean, there's just been countless examples of tuning Chrome by using this system. I mean, one of the classic examples was figuring out how many parallel TCP connections to open per origin. I mean, today it's 6, but it used to be the typical number was 4. The spec says 2. I mean, what do you choose, right? And so by tuning, by making adjustments and measuring and looking at this statistical data we get back, we can make informed decisions and make a faster product. The number that I think Ian quoted on like 5% page load performance, that kind of stuff gets validated using that anonymous usage data.
I think crash reports are probably the most useful far and away. I mean, what we use it for is a quick stability check for us, especially with Canary and Dev Channel. What we can see is release over release. We have a stat which we look at as crash per million page views. Crashes per million page views, and we can look at it by different process type and that sort of thing. And so looking at that over time, you can see when one release is dramatically less stable than another. And then have somebody drill in. So it sets off alarms. And so we have as a metric, we talked about wanting to drive performance numbers down. We also, there's a 4th S that Linus didn't mention in the keynote, which is stability as well, that we take very seriously. And we're always trying to drive that crash per million number down for all the processes, for all the platforms. And so that's another incredibly useful bit of data.
I see that clock counting down ominously. I think we've probably got time for one more question, and then we'll take questions outside if anyone can hang around.
Chrome OS sync file system seems to be backed only by Google Drive right now. Are there any plans to make that pluggable for something like Dropbox to be the data store, canonical cloud data store for a Chrome OS device?
We'd love to do it. We're starting off with one use case first and really trying to make sure we nail it. But yes, we'd love to make it so that's more pluggable. Thanks.
All right, I see last 10 seconds. I'll take this as an opportunity to just to thank everybody for coming for I/O, coming to this session, and asking such fantastic questions. I really appreciate it. So give yourselves a hand for great questions. And we'll maybe see some of you outside if we didn't get to answer them. All right.